Tonight we slip backward through time, past neon lights and phone screens, to a place where dawn arrives in soft whispers rather than alarms. You find yourself in Kyoto, quiet, misted, still wrapped in indigo night. The paper walls of your small wooden room breathe faintly, like lungs drawing in the promise of morning. You're a geisha, or at least, you're about to become one again for this single, unhurried moment. And though it's technically morning, the world still dreams around you. You probably won't survive this schedule, by the way, because waking before the sun every day just to balance a hairstyle heavier than a modern laptop is, let's face it, elite level endurance. But you will try. You always do. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air tastes faintly of tatami and incense, clean and slightly woody, with a whisper of sandalwood left over from last night's prayers. Your futon is folded neatly against the wall, sleep has already been tucked away. Outside, a single crow clears its throat. Somewhere down the alley, the first kettle begins to boil. You know what that means, it's time. You move slowly, careful not to wake the apprentice sleeping in the next room. Her dreams are still tender, fragile things. Your own dreams, however, are already dissolving like fog on the Kamigawa River. You rise in silence, your feet sinking softly into the straw mat. Every sound is magnified, the creak of your knee, the faint shift of fabric against skin, the low hum of Kyoto before dawn. The Japanese have a word for this fragile hour, yokimei, before the dawn. It's a space between worlds, when neither night nor morning fully owns the sky. Historians still argue whether the earliest geisha, once called sabaruko, or serving girls, rose at this same hour centuries ago, preparing not for ceremonies but for storytelling and music in riverside tea houses. The romantic image came later, burnished by poets and Western fascination. But here, in the dark before light, you realize the truth was always simpler. Preparation is meditation. You slide open the shite door. It whispers rather than clicks. Beyond it lies a courtyard garden just large enough for one camellia tree. Dew clings to the leaves like crystal dust. A faint breeze lifts a paper lantern, still swaying from last night's gathering. You bow instinctively toward the tree, greeting it as an old friend. Every morning, the same small ritual, a nod to permanence in a profession that trades in illusion. Your first task is to breathe. That's it. Just breathe. Inhale through the nose, slow and deep, until your ribs expand under your thin cotton robe. Exhale through your lips, like you're releasing smoke from an invisible pipe. Somewhere in that rhythm, the residue of sleep burns away. You catch sight of the lacquered mirror across the room, tall, framed in black wood that reflects not just your face but the glimmer of candlelight beside it. The face staring back is soft, unpainted, honest. A rare thing. You study it as if memorizing a secret you'll have to hide for the rest of the day. It's strange how preparation defines you more than performance. Outsiders think the geisha's art begins when the guests arrive, when laughter and shamisen music fill the tea house. But really, it starts here, in stillness, discipline, and patience. The hours before sunrise shape every brushstroke that follows. You remember stories whispered by your elder Okasan, the house mother, of geisha in the Edo period who performed under lanterns powered by fish oil, who painted their faces with white rice powder laced with lead because beauty sometimes demanded danger. The fringe rumor was that a few even mixed pearl dust into their powder to catch candlelight better, though historians still debate whether that's art or exaggeration. Either way, you suspect they simply wanted to glow. A kettle begins to murmur in the corner, an old bronze one with a chipped lid that wobbles like a lazy metronome. The sound means comfort. It also means commitment, because nothing happens quickly in your world. Even tea insists on patience. You kneel beside it, letting your knees find the precise indentations worn into the tatami by years of repetition. There's something satisfying about how the body remembers, even when the mind drifts. You lift the lid, feel the first puff of steam brush your face, warm, fragrant, faintly metallic. There's a small superstition here. If the first steam of the day touches your skin, it carries away any lingering sadness from the night before. Maybe that's why your fingers linger in it a little longer. From outside comes the faintest note of a shamisen string being tested. One of the girls must be tuning before lessons. The sound ripples through the morning like a pebble dropped in a pond. You smile, half amused. Somewhere, some poor musician in a modern apartment is probably doing the same thing right now, just with earbuds instead of hairpins. Times change, rituals persist. As the kettle hums, your thoughts drift. You picture the streets of Jayan before they fill with chatter and camera shutters. The cobblestones are slick with dew, the paper lanterns dim to a faint blush of red. If you walked them now, no one would know who you are. Bare-faced, robe loose, hair undone, you could be anyone. The idea feels scandalously freeing. But freedom is not the goal here. Control is. Grace is. The calm before the performance is your canvas. You remind yourself of this as you rise, straighten your robe, and glide back toward the mirror. Soon, the transformation will begin, the washing, the painting, the layering. For now, you stand between who you were in sleep and who you must become. And even though you've done this countless times, there's still a quiet thrill in knowing that every morning you resurrect an art that refuses to die. A faint line of gold begins to form along the horizon. Kyoto is waking. The city stretches, yawns, pulls open its shutters. And so do you, gracefully, deliberately, as if the dawn itself were waiting for your cue. The paper door slides open with that satisfying sigh of wood against wood, and a ribbon of chill air slips in to greet you. You step forward barefoot, the tatami mats pressing cool and faintly rough beneath your soles. The texture is unmistakable, woven rush grass that smells faintly of dried fields and sun. You feel it ground you, reminding you that beneath all the painted rituals and silken layers, you are still a creature of earth and breath. Your room opens toward a narrow hallway lined with shiji screens, pale light starting to filter through their paper panes. You move quietly, letting the hem of your robe whisper along the floor. It's strange how sound behaves in a tea house before dawn. Every footstep expands, echoing just enough to make you feel as though history itself is listening in. You pause near the end of the corridor where a small alcove, the tokonoma, holds a single hanging scroll painted with calligraphy. Today's phrase, written by the house calligrapher, reads Ishigo Ichi, one time, one meeting. You mouth the words silently. It's both a reminder and a warning. Each encounter you have today will never happen again, no matter how perfectly it's performed. You bow slightly to the scroll before continuing, your breath a visible wisp in the cool air. You pass the communal dressing area where a few other women still sleep. You catch a glimpse of them, faces turned toward the wall, hairpins laid neatly beside folded robes. Each breath from them rises and falls in the steady rhythm of practiced exhaustion. You could wake them, share a joke about who snores loudest, a small, running gag in the house, but you keep your silence. You learned long ago that serenity is contagious, and noise before sunrise feels like a small act of disrespect. At the end of the hall, a low wooden stand holds a polished copper basin filled with water drawn last night. The reflection ripples as you kneel beside it, candlelight fluttering across the surface like fireflies. You reach in, fingers grazing the water. It's cold enough to sting. Good. That's the point. This is where the real awakening begins, not with caffeine, not with chatter, but with deliberate discomfort. The act of feeling something pure, elemental. You splash the water over your face. It shocks your skin, erases the final traces of sleep, sharpens your senses. Tiny droplets cling to your eyelashes, blurring the world for a moment before clarity returns. In older days, geisha houses kept basins made of porcelain or stone. The water would be drawn from wells said to carry luck if touched before dawn. Historians still argue whether those superstitions were symbolic or simply excuses to make the morning more bearable. But one curious fact lingers in archives. Some okiya, especially in Japan, were built over underground springs, and it was believed that the constant sound of flowing water helped maintain a tranquil temperament. You smile at that thought. Maybe modern city dwellers would be less cranky if their apartments came with built-in serenity. You take a thin cloth and pat your skin dry. It's rough, not soft, designed that way to encourage circulation. You rub gently until your cheeks warm, a faint pink blooming through the chill. The mirror beside the basin captures your reflection again, and you notice how alive your eyes look after the wash. This is the version of you that almost no one sees. You lean closer, studying the lines where laughter sometimes hides, the faint shadow beneath your jaw where the white powder will soon rest. There's always a small hesitation before the transformation. You could walk away now, stay just yourself, unpainted, unperformed. But then again, what would be the point of all that training, all those years spent perfecting gestures precise enough to make silence speak? Outside, the city is stretching awake. You can hear the soft creak of wooden carts, the distant bark of a vendor setting up his stall. The scent of roasted barley from the neighbor's breakfast drifts faintly through the thin paper walls. You inhale it and almost laugh. Geisha life may seem like poetry, but even poetry runs on hunger and repetition. You turn and cross the narrow courtyard barefoot, the stones still damp from last night's drizzle. Tiny moss tufts glisten between them, and each step leaves a ghost of your warmth behind. The camellia tree watches you from its corner, petals curled inward as if still dreaming. You whisper a greeting, a small superstition your occasion insists upon. "Good morning, my silent friend," you murmur, bowing slightly. It feels silly, but somehow right. You notice a spider's web strung delicately between two bamboo poles. A bead of dew hangs from its center, catching the first golden streak of sunlight. You think of how fragile it looks, and yet how perfectly it holds. There's something of that in your own art, grace mistaken for weakness, when really, it's balance that defies collapse. As you step back inside, you hear a soft chuckle from down the hall. One of the younger Maiko, still in training, has woken early and is practicing her steps on the wooden floor, her bare feet squeaking slightly with each glide. The sound is both clumsy and adorable. You resist the urge to tease her. Everyone deserves their first awkward mornings. You remember yours vividly, the day you nearly tripped over your own obi in front of the entire house. The laughter that followed still echoes in your mind, warm rather than cruel. In the kitchen, you find the first pot of rice steaming gently over charcoal. The smell wraps around you like comfort itself. You pour yourself a small cup of tea, letting the bitterness coat your tongue. The taste is grounding, no sugar, no frills, just matcha and willpower. A small historical aside hums in your memory. During the Edo period, geisha were often expected to share morning tea ceremonies with their apprentices as a lesson in patience. The slow whisking of the matcha wasn't just about flavor, it was about rhythm, control, and composure. The curious bit? Some records mention that a few geisha houses secretly used cheaper roasted teas instead, saving the expensive matcha for guests. Frugality, it seems, has always had its charm. You smile at the thought and take another sip. The warmth seeps through you like sunlight through paper walls. The day has not truly begun yet, but already the ritual is working its quiet magic. You set the cup down, listening again to the shifting sounds of the house, wood creaking, water trickling, fabric rustling. Each one is a cue in this unspoken choreography of preparation. You'll spend hours crafting a face, dressing in layers that weigh more than some modern suitcases, and stepping into shoes that look elegant but feel like balance tests designed by mischievous gods. Yet, at this moment, it all feels perfectly manageable. You glance once more toward the garden, where the first bird has begun to sing, a soft, tentative trill that seems unsure whether the world is ready. You whisper back, "I am." And so you move toward the next part of your ritual, the air around you carrying the faint hum of anticipation, the tatami beneath your feet holding you steady, patient, and endlessly quiet. The steam from the basin curls upward, tracing invisible calligraphy in the air. You dip the cloth once more, wring it carefully, and press it against your cheeks, this time warmer, coaxing the skin awake instead of shocking it. The night's quiet residue melts away. When you lift your gaze, the mirror reflects not tiredness but possibility. You sit before your lacquered makeup table. Its black surface gleams like still water, and every tool rests exactly where it should. Brush, spatula, sponge, powder, pigment, and a tiny bowl of rice paste so smooth it resembles milk. The organization is almost ceremonial. You reach for the powder container first, white as snowfall, soft as sighs. There's a pause. You inhale. This part demands patience. The white base, Oshiroi, is not mere decoration. It's armor, identity, and illusion rolled into one. Historically, it was made from finely ground rice powder mixed with water, though some formulas once used lead carbonate. Historians still argue whether the danger was truly understood or quietly ignored in pursuit of beauty. Either way, you feel a flicker of gratitude for modern chemistry as you stir your harmless blend. You dip the brush into the mixture. It's cold, startlingly so, when it touches your skin. You spread it gently, from neck to forehead, avoiding the temptation to rush. The powder leaves a matte glow, catching the candlelight until your reflection becomes something otherworldly. The transformation begins not in layers, but in mindset. The woman in the mirror is no longer just you. She's an idea of grace, distilled and perfected. You catch yourself smirking. There's irony in all this effort to look effortlessly serene. You wonder if corporate workers applying their office faces each morning feel the same. Maybe you're not so different after all. The texture thickens as you blend. You remember a story your Okasan once told. In the early Meiji era, some geisha mixed crushed seashell into their powder to create a more luminous finish. The fringe rumor claimed that one ambitious woman even tried pearl dust, but her Okasan scolded her for trying to blind the guests with moonlight. You chuckle softly at that image. Once your base is complete, you use a clean brush to smooth the surface, then tilt your head to check symmetry. The face that greets you looks timeless, almost detached from modern hours and electric lights. You think of how each motion, each brushstroke, repeats a gesture passed down for centuries. It's like participating in an ancient conversation, silent but unbroken. The room around you hums faintly with the sounds of awakening life. Wood creaking, someone coughing politely, distant laughter that stops almost immediately, as if remembering the hour. You adjust your robe slightly, keeping it loose around the neck to avoid smudging your work. Your fingers reach for a small jar of translucent powder, modern talc, though still made in the old container. You dust it lightly over your face, sealing the base. The powder drifts through the air like snowflakes, and for a moment you imagine it's winter in Kyoto again, the kind of cold that makes every lantern glow like a miracle. Outside, the first hint of sunlight pushes through the paper walls, soft and golden. You lean toward it instinctively, catching the warmth before it fades. A whisper of memory surfaces, your first morning as an apprentice. You had applied too much powder, your face cracking like dry porcelain before breakfast. The senior geisha laughed kindly and called you the ghost of effort. You've never forgotten the nickname. There's something meditative about this process. You move from face to neck, to the nape where your hairline will later frame two perfect triangles of bare skin, the famous Ariashi pattern. The exposed patch at the back of the neck has always been considered the most alluring part of a geisha's appearance. It's the art of suggestion rather than exposure. Historians still debate whether that preference originated from Shinto purity rituals or simply from aesthetic restraint. Either way, it's genius. Subtlety has always aged better than spectacle. You clean the brushes meticulously after each stroke, dipping them into the small bowl of warm water and wiping them with the linen cloth beside you. The rhythm is hypnotic. Dip, sweep, rinse, pat. If meditation had choreography, this would be it. The smell of the mixture lingers faintly, rice, camellia oil, and something floral you can't quite name. The combination has a strangely comforting effect, like remembering a childhood kitchen and a theater dressing room at once. You glance at the clock on the wall, a quiet, round-faced antique that ticks slower than modern time. There's no rush. You remind yourself of this often. Rushing is the enemy of grace. Even when you perform later, your movements will appear effortless only because of this steady, deliberate pace. You study your reflection again. The features are softened by the white, the contours smoothed into calm geometry. You look neither young nor old, just eternal, like a painting that forgot how to fade. You lean closer and whisper to your reflection, almost ready. The mirror fogs slightly with your breath, and when it clears, the transformation has taken hold fully. Your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of the house, one continuous, patient pulse. You feel the first twinge of anticipation for the next steps, color, contrast, and completion. You rise carefully, mindful of your sleeves. The tatami welcomes you back, cool and firm. The scent of incense drifts in again. Someone must have lit it in the hall. You close your eyes and let the smoke trace its delicate path past your cheek, curling like a blessing. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you register that the city is properly awake now. The distant sound of a cartwheel rolling over stone, a shout from a fishmonger, the faint rhythm of Geisha sandals clicking on the street. It all blends into a kind of living background music. And you, pale as moonlight, calm as water, sit perfectly still in the center of it, a portrait of precision waiting for its next brush of life. You reach for the small wooden bowl where the rice paste has cooled just enough to thicken. The scent is faintly sweet, familiar, somewhere between steamed rice and rain-soaked tatami. You scoop a dab with the edge of your brush, testing its texture before gliding it gently along your jawline. It's smoother now, practiced. Each motion feels like an echo from the hundreds before it, the hundreds yet to come. Your reflection has begun to disappear beneath porcelain. The powder softens the planes of your face, blurs the humanity just enough to allow art to take over. You lean closer, adjusting the angle of the brush. A perfect stroke matters more than a perfect feature. At least, that's what your Okaisan used to say when you were young and impatient, swiping color like a child painting clouds. The next step is setting the powder. You reach for a tiny silk puff, pressing it into the mix and then patting your cheeks in slow, rhythmic motions. The sound is soothing, tiny, muted thuds against the hush of the room. You fall into its rhythm until your breath matches it, each exhale timed with each touch. There's a calm that arrives here, an almost meditative trance. You recall reading somewhere, probably in one of those Western travel books that try to dissect the mystery of geisha life, that some scholars consider this ritual a daily act of self-erasure. Historians still argue whether that's poetic exaggeration or uncomfortable truth. But sitting here, the thought doesn't feel sad. It feels intentional. You're not erasing, you're editing, curating what the world gets to see. You dip the brush again. The powder glows faintly under candlelight, and for a heartbeat, you catch yourself grinning. If ancient geisha could see today's ring light tutorials and 20-step beauty routines, they'd probably raise a perfectly plucked brow and mutter, "Amateurs." The humor steadies your hand. You blend the final streak beneath your chin, then tilt your face toward the mirror, studying the effect. You're luminous now, ghostly and alive at once. The white base has become a second skin, a surface onto which the day will be painted. You move to the next step, refining the nape. Pulling your hair aside, you reveal the soft curve at the back of your neck where the oshioroi will deliberately not be applied. This small omission forms the ariashi, the double triangle left bare, symbolizing purity and subtle allure. It's one of the most recognized trademarks of geisha appearance, though few outsiders realize its depth. The exposed skin represents both vulnerability and mystery, a quiet whisper that says, "You may look, but never know." You take your brush and carefully outline the borders of that triangle, ensuring the edges are crisp. One misstroke and you'd have to start over. You steady your hand, inhale, and there. Perfect. A small laugh escapes you. Somewhere in the house, someone sneezes, a delicate, high-pitched sound followed by a murmured apology. You suppress your own giggle, biting your lip to avoid disturbing the paint. The irony isn't lost on you, hours of composure undone by a sneeze. It's a cosmic joke every geisha learns to respect. As the layers dry, you glance toward the window. The paper panels glow gold now. The sunlight is finding you, filtering through the garden's camellia leaves, scattering tiny dots across the tatami. You shift slightly so that the warmth touches your arm. There's something grounding about this balance, half ritual, half rebellion. You're performing ancient tradition, yet every brushstroke is uniquely yours. Even within the strictness of the craft, individuality sneaks in. The tilt of your eyebrow, the faint quirk of your lip, the way you prefer to leave the powder slightly translucent instead of opaque. You reach for a small fan to dry the makeup more quickly. The paper rustles with each wave, a rhythm soft enough to lull even the restless into stillness. The air carries the scent of camellia oil and rice paste, clean and slightly nostalgic. Your thoughts drift again, this time to the women who once sat here before you. Some famous, some forgotten. One name surfaces, Kikuno, a legendary Kyoto geisha from the late Edo period, said to have used the same brush for 20 years. A fringe tale claims she buried it ceremoniously when she retired, wrapping it in silk and leaving it beneath her favorite plum tree. You wonder if that story's true or just another romantic embellishment. Either way, it's charming. Your own brush feels worn at the base, the handle smoothed by countless mornings. You run your thumb along it fondly, as though it were an old friend. Then comes the whisper of completion. You feel it rather than see it. The base is dry, seamless, perfect. You let your shoulders relax, realizing you've been holding your breath again. You think of modern mornings, coffee in paper cups, glowing screens, endless noise, and how alien this silence would seem to them. Here, nothing blares or buzzes. Even time seems polite enough to wait. The mirror before you now holds not one reflection but two. The bare memory of the woman who began this morning and the poised apparition she's becoming. You meet both gazes and nod slightly, as if sealing an unspoken pact. Outside, a soft bell rings from the nearby temple, announcing the hour. The sound is round and slow, the kind that seems to pass through bone. You let it settle inside you, deep and resonant. When it fades, you pick up your small linen towel and wipe the powder dust from your fingers. The bowl of water beside you ripples once more as you rinse the brush. White clouds spread across the surface, swirling like miniature storms before dissolving into clarity again. And in that clarity, you see what comes next. Color. the whisper of life upon this calm, pale canvas. The white base gleams under the muted morning light, a calm canvas awaiting its deliberate chaos. You tilt your head slightly, examining the soft planes of your face in the mirror. Now comes the act that turns stillness into expression, adding life back to what the powder has quieted. You begin with the eyebrows, that subtle punctuation of emotion. From a small ceramic tray, you take the black pigment made from soot and oil, haiboku, a traditional ink that once came from the residue of burned pine branches. It carries a faint scent of smoke, old libraries, and discipline. You mix it gently with a few drops of water, watching as the dark pool blooms, silky and ominous. The brush you use for this is fine and tapered, made from weasel hair. You steady your wrist. Each stroke is a decision, and hesitation is visible even beneath layers of powder. You start at the center of your brow, tracing outward in delicate, controlled movements. The line must not be too sharp, harshness is unbecoming, but it mustn't waver either. As you work, you remember your first lessons, how your mentor would stand behind you, guiding your elbow, whispering, "The brush doesn't draw, it breathes." It sounded ridiculous at the time, like advice from a fortune cookie, but now you understand. The line isn't painted, it's exhaled. The reflection in the mirror gains quiet intent. The eyebrows arch, symmetrical yet subtly different, like twin questions rather than exclamations. Historians still argue whether the exaggerated shapes of Edo period brows were purely aesthetic or had hidden messages about emotion and rank. Some claim that certain angles implied flirtation, others obedience. You smile faintly, thinking how little has changed. People still read faces like tea leaves. Next comes the lips. You reach for the tiny porcelain dish that holds your red pigment, beni, extracted from safflower petals. The color is deep, vivid, and almost electric against the whiteness of your skin. You mix it with a touch of water until it gleams like molten rubies. Tradition says that full lips are unnecessary. Geisha apply the red only to the center, leaving the edges pale. It gives the impression of a soft bloom, a smile that's always half hidden. You trace the lower lip first, a single brush stroke, precise and trembling with restraint. Then the upper, two small peaks like mountain tips glimpsed through mist. You pause, brush hovering mid-air. This is the moment where the transformation completes its first circle, from human to icon, from woman to symbol. You lean back, assessing the result. The red glows faintly against the white, as if illuminated from within. You purse your lips slightly and almost laugh. Somewhere in the modern world, a makeup influencer would call this minimalist bold. The thought breaks your composure just enough to relax your shoulders. You take a breath, letting the tension dissolve. Your gaze shifts to the small wooden box beside the mirror. Inside are your tools of color, tiny cakes of rouge, charcoal, and pink, some so worn their edges have gone soft from years of use. You pick one at random, a faint blush made from crushed petals and a pinch of vermilion. You dust it lightly across your cheeks, careful not to disturb the base. It adds just enough warmth to make the white seem less ghostly, more alive. A faint memory surfaces. One morning years ago, your mentor told you that even a trace of blush could change the tone of a performance. Without warmth, she said, a smile becomes a mask. You never forgot that. The room feels warmer now, or maybe it's the rising sun. The light through the paper windows has shifted from gold to soft amber, casting geometric patterns across the tatami. You watch the shadows move, delicate as brushwork on silk. Then comes the detail most guests will never notice, the subtle shading at the corners of the eyes. You pick up a smaller brush, dip it into a muted brown, and draw a faint curve beneath each lash line. The effect is minimal, almost invisible, but it softens the gaze, adds depth where the white could seem flat. There's a small superstition tied to this step, a whisper among older geisha that if you draw the shading slightly unevenly, it invites luck because even perfection needs permission to breathe. You can't remember who told you that, but you've obeyed it ever since. Your reflection now looks both serene and alert, human and divine. The lines, the colors, the balance, all calibrated to evoke not reality but idealized emotion. You think of how artists once painted bijingar, woodblock portraits of beautiful women, that captured not individuals but the idea of beauty itself. You've become one of those ideas, temporarily alive. You notice a tiny drop of beni that's escaped onto your thumb. It stains your skin like a secret mark. You wipe it away with a damp cloth, leaving only the faintest blush. The cloth itself, when folded, will later be washed and reused, a small testament to the frugality that underpins all this elegance. Nothing wasted, not even effort. The air grows still. You look once more into the mirror. There's a face looking back that isn't entirely yours but also isn't anyone else's. You tilt your head slightly to the right, then left, testing the balance of shadow and light. Outside, the temple bell rings again, closer this time, as though it too has woken properly. You let its resonance pass through you before setting the brush down. It's done. The transformation, though incomplete, has crossed a threshold. You are no longer the girl who woke to the sound of crows and cold air. You've become a living painting, a whisper in color and line. You stand, the tatamis faint give beneath your feet reminding you that even art needs grounding. A new thought hums at the edge of your awareness. The face is ready, but the body must follow. The skin is porcelain, but the gesture must be silk. You take one last glance at the mirror, just to commit the image to memory. The inked brows, the restrained lips, the fragile blush, all so delicate they could vanish if you exhaled too hard. You don't exhale. You simply smile, quietly. The white mask of calm has settled. Now comes the ceremony of layers, the tactile, whispering labor that transforms you from porcelain figure into living sculpture. You move from the mirror to the dressing stand, where the fabric waits in careful stacks, each folded with geometric precision. Kimono first, then underrobes, ties, sashes, and finally the obi, a universe of color about to unfold. You touch the top layer reverently. Its silk dyed a gentle mauve, its sheen changing slightly with the angle of light. Beneath it lies the juban, the underkimono, pale pink, almost invisible when worn, but vital for structure and modesty. The weight of these garments isn't symbolic, it's physical, pressing against your shoulders with the insistence of tradition. You start with the innermost robe, slipping your arms into its sleeves. The fabric is cool, almost damp with morning air. The collar brushes against your neck, careful not to disturb the painted triangles of bare skin. Your fingers move automatically, fastening ties at your waist. The quiet rustle of silk over skin is oddly intimate, like a conversation between past and present. Historians still argue whether the layering customs of geisha derived from aristocratic court fashion or from the practical needs of performers who required mobility while maintaining grace. Either way, each layer is a story. You wear history, thread by thread. The next robe slides over your shoulders. This one heavier, dyed indigo with subtle cranes embroidered along the hem. You smooth it down, aligning the seams. There's a ritual satisfaction in this alignment, as though each straight edge restores balance to the universe. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you imagine a modern minimalist designer watching you, sketching frantic notes, 5 centuries ahead of the capsule wardrobe concept. You chuckle softly at the absurdity, then pull the final kimono from its box. This one gleams in gradients of red and cream, a whisper of hand-painted blossoms blooming up the sleeves. You unfold it carefully, letting it drape across your lap. The silk catches the light like water. When you slip into it, the sensation is immediate and complete. You feel contained yet free, bound but purposeful. You tie the hanari, the decorative collar, ensuring the pink lining peaks just enough to frame your neck. This small border of color is one of those details that looks effortless but requires precision. Too much exposure looks gaudy. Too little, dull. You adjust it millimeter by millimeter until your reflection seems to sigh in approval. The ties around your waist tighten as you bind each layer into place. By the time the final sash is fastened, your breathing has changed, shallower, more deliberate. The weight is noticeable now. Geisha often joke that putting on a full kimono is like hugging a polite anaconda. You think the comparison's unfair, to the anaconda, at least. Still, there's a strange comfort in the constriction. It forces stillness. Movement becomes intentional. You don't fidget, you glide. Even walking requires awareness of how the fabric moves. The kimono doesn't follow you, you negotiate with it. As you smooth the sleeves, your eyes drift to the lacquered chest near the wall. Its drawers hold seasonal accessories, fans, hair ornaments, and embroidered cords. The patterns change with the calendar: cherry blossoms in spring, maple leaves in autumn, chrysanthemums in late summer. Today's cords are pale gold with tiny cranes embroidered along their length, echoing the motif on your robe. Continuity matters. You remember your first time dressing yourself. It took hours, a comedy of slipping ties and collapsing folds. Your Okasan watched, patient but clearly entertained. Every geisha must learn to lose a battle with silk before she learns to win it, she said. The phrase stuck with you, half wisdom, half threat. Now your fingers move with quiet certainty. The robes settle against your skin like memory itself, familiar, weighty, intimate. A small superstition murmurs through your mind. If you tie your final sash with steady hands, the day will unfold without mishap. You exhale slowly and make the knot in one smooth pull. The silk resists, then yields. Perfect. For a moment, you stand motionless, adjusting to the sensation of 20 pounds of layered fabric resting on your frame. It's both armor and restraint. The kimono conceals your heartbeat yet magnifies every gesture. Even lifting your hand feels choreographed. You look at your reflection again. The pale face framed by cascading silk seems both ancient and immediate, as though time itself paused for this act. You reach for the final accessory before the obi. The obi jime, a thin decorative cord meant to secure the sash. It's said that the knot you tie carries personal energy. Some women choose patterns believed to ward off misfortune. You opt for the simple diamond knot, not because you're superstitious, you totally are, but because it feels balanced. Then, a whisper of laughter from the corridor. One of the younger Maiko struggles with her robe, muttering curses disguised as prayers. You grin, remembering how you once did the same, how every generation must wrestle with these silken serpents before learning to dance with them. You step toward the mirror again, your reflection now complete from chin to hem. The sight steals your breath for a heartbeat. You look untouchable, serene, almost divine, and yet you know it's the product of human endurance and repetition. That's the secret, isn't it? Serenity isn't born, it's practiced. Outside, the camellia tree glows under a beam of sunlight. The petals have opened fully now, mirroring your own unfurling. You turn slightly to watch them through the HD screen. Nature performs its own quiet ceremony every morning, no powder or silk required. You bow your head slightly to the reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back isn't a performer yet, but she's ready. Almost. There remains the most intricate layer of all, the obi, the ribbon that turns discipline into art. You breathe once, slow and steady, letting the air fill what space the silk allows. Your fingertips trace the smooth edge of the waiting fabric. The next step will test both patience and spine. You lift the long, folded obi from its box with both hands, the silk sliding over itself in slow waves. It's heavy, heavier than it looks, thick brocade that catches the light in a pattern of cranes and clouds. This is the part that demands patience and muscle, a contradiction geisha learn early. Beauty, in this world, is an act of endurance. You spread it carefully across your lap, smoothing out invisible wrinkles. The gold threads shimmer faintly, like sunlight trapped in fabric. Every geisha's obi tells a quiet story. Some are gifts from patrons, some hammer-downs from mentors, some purchased after years of saving. Yours is old but dignified, a subtle masterpiece in a profession where subtlety is the loudest form of elegance. The process begins with a fold, then another, each one tucked and flattened with the precision of origami. You wrap the silk around your waist once, twice, keeping the layers even. The weight grows with each turn, pressing gently against your ribs. It feels like being embraced by history, tightly. You reach for the small obita, a stiff board slipped between the folds to keep the front flat. Without it, the obi would sag, and sagging, as you've been reminded more than once, is an offense equal to public yawning. You insert it carefully, feeling the structure take shape. Binding the obi alone is an art form. In earlier centuries, it was tied by an attendant called a otakoshi, often a specialized dresser whose entire livelihood depended on knowing knots. Historians still argue whether these dressers were confidants, servants, or quiet collaborators in crafting the geisha's image. Whatever the truth, their role was intimate, pulling, smoothing, adjusting fabric against skin until beauty balanced perfectly on the edge of discomfort. You tighten the silk another inch. It compresses your breathing slightly, forcing a kind of stillness. You've learned to love that, how control feels like calm when chosen deliberately. The knot you'll use today is a taiko musubi, drum knot. It's formal, dignified, and practical for daily appearances. Your hands move by memory, folding and tucking the fabric into shape. It's muscle memory, choreography performed for an invisible audience. Halfway through, you pause to stretch your shoulders, rolling them gently to relieve the growing tension. You mutter under your breath, "Who needs a gym membership?" A joke you've made so many times it barely counts as humor anymore, but it keeps you sane. You secure the final fold with a narrow obi-jime cord, tying it into a small decorative knot that sits like a punctuation mark against the gold. The cord is crimson, its contrast deliberate, a reminder that perfection needs interruption. You study your reflection again. The silhouette is complete now, the hourglass illusion achieved not by nature but by geometry and silk. The obi's bow rises elegantly at your back, impossible to reach yet central to your identity. It's both armor and adornment, hiding the tension beneath the calm. There's a strange poetry in that, the idea that beauty is designed to face outward, while struggle remains invisible. You think of all the modern uniforms that do the same. Business suits, stage costumes, social media filters. We've never stopped dressing for illusion, we've only changed fabrics. You turn slowly, testing the fit. Each step you take causes the kimono to sway just enough to reveal the layers beneath, like the rhythm of breathing. You practice a few measured movements, the glide of a step, the half turn, the bow. The obi holds firm, a quiet reminder of restraint. A memory surfaces. Your mentor once told you the obi represents balance. It keeps the world from unraveling behind you. You didn't understand it then. Now, you do. Without its pressure, everything, silk, posture, composure, would fall apart. Outside, the light grows whiter. The morning has advanced to the point where the city hums properly. You hear the low rumble of delivery carts, the rhythmic clack of wooden sandals, the polite exchanges of greetings from one shop front to another. Kyoto is awake. You turn to the small mirror again, catching sight of the crimson cord and the faint shimmer of the gold silk. You can't help smiling. You've always liked how the obi reflects light as you move, how it catches attention without trying. It's an accidental lesson in charisma. Stand still long enough, and the world will orbit you. The last step is smoothing the front, pressing out invisible wrinkles with the flat of your hands. The silk is warm from your touch now. You trace the faint embroidered crane along the hem, a symbol of longevity, so common it risks cliché, yet somehow never loses power. You think of the countless generations who wore similar motifs, wishing the same wish, to be remembered, not necessarily forever, but long enough to matter. A knock at the sliding door interrupts your thought. A soft voice calls, "Breakfast, Onisan." You answer with a gentle hi, and listen to the retreating footsteps. The scent of miso and roasted fish wafts through the air, grounding the morning's ceremony in something comfortingly ordinary. It's a small, welcome reminder that no amount of silk changes the fact that humans run on hunger. You take one more look at yourself. The transformation is almost complete. The face and form are ready, but something remains, the crowning structure of discipline and art, your hair. Soon, pins will pierce waxed locks, lacquer will gleam, and gravity itself will bow in defeat. You take a deep breath, feeling the obi's pressure against your ribs. The air moves shallow but steady. That's how it should be. You are contained, composed, perfectly bound. The morning waits patiently for your next ritual, the sculpting of elegance that even sleep cannot undo. The obi holds its shape perfectly, glinting faintly in the morning light, and now your attention turns upward, to the crown, the fortress, the living sculpture that is your hair. You approach the low stool near the window, where the lacquered combs gleam in a small tray beside a bowl of camellia oil. The scent drifts faintly sweet, floral with a whisper of wax. You lower yourself with care. Sitting feels different when wrapped in silk. A mirror stands before you, tall enough to catch your entire frame. Your hair, still loose from the night, spills over your shoulders in dark waves, an unruly sea that must soon become architecture. This is not a casual undertaking. Traditional geisha hairstyles, shimoda, taka, momo wear, are feats of geometry and endurance. Each structure communicates status, age, and occasion. The young Maiko wear elaborate loops and lacquered ornaments that sway like chandeliers. Mature geisha, however, favor restraint, the understated perfection of a style that says more by moving less. You pick up the wooden comb and begin detangling. The teeth catch slightly, whispering through your hair like wind through reeds. The action is repetitive, meditative. Every stroke releases the faint crackle of static, followed by a soft sigh as the strands yield. There's an old superstition that a geisha's comb absorbs her thoughts. That's why many never share theirs, too much memory stored between the teeth. You wonder, idly, what your comb knows of you. The long nights, the laughter, the days when silence was a shield. A soft knock at the door announces the hairdresser's arrival. You murmur a greeting. She enters, bowing slightly, carrying a tray of tools, pins, wax, ribbons, a small iron warmed over charcoal. Her presence is calm, professional. You've known her for years. "Good morning," she says. "Your hair slept well." You grin faintly. "Better than I did." She chuckles, already assessing the texture. Her fingers are sure, firm yet gentle. She begins by dividing the hair into sections, lifting each with deliberate rhythm. The tugging is sharp but not cruel. You've grown used to the small ache. It's the price of beauty that doesn't wilt. Historians still argue whether the earliest Nihongami hairstyles were adapted from samurai wives or from Edo courtesans, those twin influences of austerity and allure. Either way, by the 18th century, Hair had become not just ornament but signature. Each twist and pin communicated lineage, refinement, and control. The hairdresser applies the wax, a mixture of rice starch and camellia oil, thick as honey. It smells faintly of earth after rain. She warms a strand between her palms, then smooths it into place. The texture changes immediately, turning glossy and pliant. You feel your scalp tighten with each pull, a subtle pulse that syncs with your heartbeat. You think of modern stylists with their sprays and dryers, unaware that their tools are descendants of this slow ritual. This is hair as architecture, a structure meant to last days. Once finished, you'll sleep on a wooden pillow, a takamakura, to protect the shape. Not the softest bedtime accessory, but it teaches stillness, and you've learned that stillness is a skill worth mastering. The hairdresser hums quietly, some old folk tune about cherry blossoms and vanished summers. You close your eyes, letting her rhythm guide your breathing. Occasionally, she dips a finger in oil, re-warming it before taming another lock. Each motion feels ceremonial, practiced thousands of times but never rushed. You can feel the moment when the form begins to take shape, the subtle shift of balance as the hair gathers upward, twisting, looping, folding back upon itself. The sound of pins sliding in is crisp, like tiny swords being drawn and sheathed. "Too tight?" she asks. "No," you reply, though it is. But discomfort, at this stage, is just another layer of calm. A stray memory flits by, of a time when you once sneezed mid-styling. The result resembled an abstract sculpture rather than a traditional coiffure. You and the stylist had laughed until tears ruined your powder. "Art," she said at the time, "is knowing when to start over." Now, there's no need to restart. The bun sits high and proud, the front gently curved, the side wings smooth as silk petals. She inserts the first kanzashi, a silver hairpin shaped like a tiny fan. Then another, this one lacquered red with a dangling bead that sways as you breathe. Each ornament is more than decoration, it's punctuation for identity. The final touch is a slender tortoiseshell comb slid horizontally across the back, locking the structure in place. You tilt your head slightly to test its balance. Perfect. The hairdresser steps back, her eyes soft with quiet satisfaction. "You look like yourself again," she says. You smile. "That's the trick, isn't it?" Because that's what the entire ritual is, a return to the self through repetition. Others might see artifice, you feel restoration. Every morning, through powder, silk, and wax, you rebuild the version of you that the world can understand. The stylist bows once more and departs, leaving the faint scent of camellia lingering in the air. You remain seated for a moment, motionless, admiring the finished form in the mirror. The face framed by gleaming black coils is no longer merely human. It's a symbol, an inheritance, an act of defiance against impermanence. Outside, a sparrow lands briefly on the window ledge, chirping twice before darting away. You watch it go, imagining for a moment what it must be like to live without pins, without ritual, without the need for perfection. Then you smile again, because you wouldn't trade this stillness for flight. You rise carefully, aware that even a deep nod could undo hours of work. The weight at the back of your head feels almost regal, balancing your posture. Every inch of you now exists with purpose. No stray hair, no wrinkle, no wasted motion. The reflection before you has transformed into the ideal, composed, luminous, untouchable. Yet behind the calm, your pulse remains steady and real, a heartbeat echoing through centuries of practice. The ritual is nearly complete, but before you step into the day, there remains one final act of centering, the quiet tea that seals the morning's spell. You move from the mirror to the small table by the window, where a simple tray rests, ceramic bowl, bamboo whisk, tea caddy, and a folded cloth that carries the scent of clean linen and faint smoke. The morning light, now steady and pale, pours through the shiji, softening everything it touches. The ceremony before you isn't performance, it's restoration. Tea has always been the hinge between stillness and the day's motion. You kneel, adjusting your kimono folds so they fall like water around you. The obi presses firm against your spine, reminding you to remain upright. Your hands move automatically, guided by habit rather than thought. The cloth unfolds. The whisk rests between your fingers. Each gesture feels rehearsed by generations, yet somehow belongs only to you. You scoop the green matcha powder into the bowl, vivid, almost luminous against the matte ceramic. The scent is grassy, slightly bitter, comforting. You pour in the hot water, watching steam curl like ghosts escaping the past. As you whisk, the rhythm begins. Fast, circular motions, quiet but insistent, until a fine foam appears across the surface. The sound, bristles whispering against clay, is hypnotic. You breathe with it, in and out, matching tempo to heartbeat. This is your metronome for the day. There's a small superstition among older geisha. If the foam forms evenly, the day will remain balanced. If it breaks apart, expect interruptions. You glance down. The foam holds firm, smooth as silk. Balance, for now, is yours. You pause to inhale the steam, letting it coat your throat before the first sip. The taste is strong, slightly bitter, cutting through the faint sweetness of the camellia oil that still lingers near your face. The flavor pulls you into the present. No nostalgia, no anticipation, just this moment of quiet. Historians still argue whether the tea rituals of the geisha houses evolved from Zen monasteries or from the merchant class's love of refinement during the Edo period. The truth, as usual, likely lies between devotion and display. For you, it's neither religion nor show, it's calibration. The tea cools slightly, and you take another sip, slower this time. Each swallow feels like it polishes the edges of your mind. You think of all the chaotic mornings you've lived before, when the world outside demanded noise, speed, reaction. Here, the opposite rule reigns. Nothing is urgent, yet everything matters. A breeze slides through the cracked window, carrying the scent of blooming magnolia. The petals have opened overnight. They weren't there yesterday. Nature moves quickly when it wants to, yet still manages to appear patient. You envy that. You rest your hands briefly on your knees, eyes closed. The pressure of the obi, the faint pull of the hairpins, the lingering flavor of matcha, all sensations align into one single awareness. You don't have to try to be calm. Calm arrives when effort stops pretending to help. Somewhere in another room, the younger Maiko chatter softly, their laughter rising and falling like the sound of distant bells. You smile. Their day will come, one filled with lessons, mistakes, the endless cycle of dressing, practicing, performing. But for now, your quiet reigns. You rinse the bowl carefully, watching the green traces swell away. Even this act feels symbolic, the clearing of residue, the renewal of space. The utensils return to their places, aligned as perfectly as they were found. Nothing out of order, nothing excessive. A small notebook lies near the tray, bound in faded silk. You open it to a random page. Inside are handwritten reflections, phrases, reminders, fragments from mornings past. Stillness is not absence. One line reads, "It's the shape of attention." You add a new note beneath it, "Patience tastes like tea." You close the book with a soft smile. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the fall of your kimono. Standing again feels strange after kneeling so long. The blood takes its time returning to your feet. You stretch subtly, rolling your shoulders once. Every motion is deliberate. You glance toward the mirror again, though you already know what you'll see, serenity reassembled. The ritual has done its work. You are no longer the person who woke before dawn in a half-lit room. That version of you has been refined away, sifted like tea leaves through water. A clock somewhere ticks, a modern sound intruding softly on an ancient rhythm. You welcome it. The blend of old and new feels right. You are, after all, a creature of both. The tea bowl, empty and rinsed, gleams faintly in the morning light. You touch its rim once before leaving the table. The calm it offered lingers behind your ribs, steady as breath. The next step will return you to motion, to the practice of grace, of art that hides labor. Soon you'll rise to your feet, rehearse the subtle glide that turns walking into floating, the quiet proof that calm is not stillness but mastery. For now, though, the tea's warmth settles deep within you. The world outside Kyoto's narrow streets continues spinning, unaware that within this quiet room, centuries have passed in the span of a single sip. You rise from the tea tray, feeling the warmth of the matcha linger somewhere between your chest and your breath. The world outside has fully woken now. The low hum of bicycles on cobblestones drifts in through the open shiji, mingling with the distant call of a street vendor. You stretch your hands once, palms open, fingers flexed, ready to return to movement, to the gentle performance that begins long before the first guest ever arrives. Your sandals wait near the door, but before you step into them, you cross the room to the polished wooden floor where practice begins. A narrow space, empty except for a small mirror, exists purely for movement, a private stage where imperfection is allowed. You take your place at its center, feet together, posture straight, head balanced perfectly above the axis of the spine. The obi supports you, a soft command against slouching. You inhale once, then glide forward. Not a walk, a glide, the signature of a geisha's grace. The secret lies in the hidden bend of the knees, the minute tilt of the hips, the silent brush of fabric against floorboards. Each step must appear effortless, though you know it's anything but. The body learns what the mind forgets. Beauty is muscle memory disguised as ease. You turn, pivoting on the ball of your foot. The movement is so slow it feels like time has conspired with you. You bow slightly, watching the silk of your sleeves cascade like liquid light. This rhythm is ancient, yet somehow always feels new when done correctly. Historians still argue whether the famed glide of the geisha evolved from practical necessity, walking quietly in layered kimono, or from deliberate mimicry of no performers, whose slow movements carried symbolic weight. Either way, the effect remains hypnotic, serenity in motion. You repeat the sequence again and again, each glide smoother than the last. Your arms rise subtly with each breath, hands flowing through invisible air currents. You imagine tracing lines of calligraphy through the morning light, your fingertips leaving words the world will never see. A laugh escapes you when your sleeve snags briefly on your obi knot, proof that perfection is always a moving target. Still human, you murmur, and take another step, slower this time, savoring the whisper of silk. Movement practice, for a geisha, is as much meditation as it is muscle training. Every motion reinforces control, how to enter a room, how to bow without revealing fatigue, how to hold a fan in such a way that it speaks before you do. Each small act declares mastery over chaos. You reach for the folding fan resting nearby, its bamboo ribs painted with crimson petals. When opened, it snaps lightly, a heartbeat of sound in the quiet room. You practice with it, tracing arcs through the air, matching breath to gesture. Open, inhale. Close, exhale. The fan becomes a partner, its rhythm echoing the pulse you can almost hear in your temples. You pause after a while, lowering the fan and studying your reflection in the small mirror. The image looking back is calm, yes, but alive too, slightly flushed from motion, lips parted just enough to betray breath. You find it reassuring. All ritual aside, you're still human beneath the layers. You remember your first lesson years ago, when your instructor snapped her fan shut and said, "The point isn't to move beautifully. The point is to make others forget movement exists." You hadn't understood then. Now, after years of repetition, you do. Grace isn't in the motion, it's in the disappearance of effort. Outside, a temple bell tolls once, resonant and low. It rolls through the air like an invisible wave, and you catch its echo in your breath, aligning your next step to its fading sound. You bow instinctively toward the window, acknowledging a rhythm larger than your own. Your thoughts drift to the paradox that defines this life. You must train every day to appear untrained, practice restraint to express freedom, labor endlessly to embody leisure. It's absurd and elegant at once, the kind of contradiction that keeps philosophers awake and geisha poised. You lower the fan again, resting it atop your folded palms. The air feels thicker now, warmed by motion and sunlight. You turn once more, taking 3 measured steps toward the doorway, then back again, the hem of your kimono brushing the floor with a sigh. The cadence is perfect, soft, deliberate, serene. Somewhere in another room, the faint notes of a shamisen begin, a plucked melody, tentative but rhythmic. The sound vibrates through the tatami beneath your feet, mingling with your breath. You smile, knowing that music practice has begun next door. It's your cue, a reminder that your morning solitude is nearing its close. Still, you allow yourself one more sequence. Glide. Pause. Turn. Bow. The repetition feels eternal, yet grounding. You know that each day begins the same way and ends with the echo of these same steps. Routine isn't confinement, it's the frame that holds serenity in place. You stop, exhale, and close the fan one last time. The snap echoes softly. The air seems to settle around you, a quiet applause from the universe. You bow to the empty room, a gesture of gratitude to both discipline and imperfection. Tomorrow you'll do it again, perhaps a little better, perhaps the same. What matters is the motion itself, the unbroken dance between control and release. You step toward the sound of the shamisen, toward the thread of music that will soon weave into your day, carrying your calm forward in rhythm and grace. The sound of the shamisen continues, a thin thread of melody weaving through the wooden beams of the house. You follow it quietly, sandals whispering against the floor. The morning has deepened into late light, and the air smells faintly of cedar and powdered incense. Your reflection lingers in your mind as you move, but soon it will be replaced by another, the reflection that stares back from the mirror not as a woman preparing, but as one ready to face the gaze of others. You enter the practice room. The space is dim, lit by the gentle glow of paper lanterns. A younger Maiko sits cross-legged on the tatami, plucking at her shamisen with intense concentration. Her brow furrows, her fingers stumble. You remember that feeling, the quiet panic of being watched by one's own expectations. You seat yourself nearby, careful not to disturb the folds of your kimono. She looks up, startled, and bows deeply. "Onisan," she murmurs. You nod, gesturing for her to continue. She resumes playing, the sound slightly tremulous but sincere. Each note wavers like a bird learning flight. You listen, not judging, simply breathing in rhythm. The melody is familiar, an old tune about spring rain and fleeting beauty. It was the first piece you ever mastered. You hum softly, guiding her tempo. Historians still argue whether the shamisen's arrival in Japan, some trace it to 16th century Okinawa, others to China's Sanxian, marked a cultural shift or simply another adaptation. What's certain is that within decades, it became inseparable from the geisha's craft, voice, movement, and string intertwined. The Maiko glances up again, nervous, and you offer the faintest smile. "Let the rhythm breathe," you whisper. Music isn't a chase, it's a conversation. She nods, adjusts her fingers, and tries again. This time, the sound steadies. You watch the vibration of each string fade into silence. That's the thing about music. It disappears as soon as it exists. Like morning rituals, it lives only in repetition. You reach out, taking the shamisen for a moment. The wood feels warm from her touch. You play a few notes, smooth, measured. The tone is fuller, but not because of skill, because of stillness. The younger one listens intently, eyes wide. You hand the instrument back. You'll find your calm, you say. The strings always forgive. She smiles shyly, gratitude glowing in her expression. There's pride in that, quiet and unspoken. The satisfaction of seeing reflection in another's progress. You sit for a while longer, listening to her play. Outside, a wind stirs the bamboo, making them clack together like distant percussion. The sound blends with the shamisen's rhythm until it's hard to tell where the instrument ends and the world begins. When she finishes, you rise and bow. Enough for today, you say softly. She bows in return, relief visible in her shoulders. You leave her to her own practice and step into the corridor again. As you walk, the faint echo of your own footsteps merges with the lingering melody. There's a strange comfort in these overlapping sounds, the harmony of habit and history. Every note played, every breath taken, feels like a link in an invisible chain stretching backward through centuries. You pass by the small mirror once more, the one by the tea set. This time, your reflection feels different. It's no longer an object of scrutiny but a companion, an old friend who has stopped keeping score. You tilt your head slightly, and for an instant, it feels as though the woman in the glass tilts hers back. You think of all the women who've performed this same ritual, who've balanced grace and fatigue, serenity and constraint. Some names are remembered, others lost entirely. But every morning, they returned to the mirror, tied the obi, tuned the strings, and began again. Continuity, you realize, is its own immortality. A thought flickers, one you rarely allow yourself. How strange it is that an entire culture built an art form around the illusion of stillness, yet beneath it, everything pulses with effort. Maybe that's why people come to watch, not for perfection, but for the quiet thrill of knowing someone maintains it. You move toward the open doorway where sunlight spills across the floor. Dust motes drift like tiny dancers in the beam. You extend a hand through the light, watching them scatter. The world outside beckons. The calm, narrow lanes of Kyoto, the promise of motion after stillness. But before you step into it, one final preparation remains. A moment of reckoning with yourself, with the image that has now become reality. The shamisen's final echo fades behind you. What remains is silence, thick, golden, and utterly alive. The silence that follows the last note of the shamisen seems to hover in the air, fragile and golden. You pause at the threshold, letting that silence settle into you. The moment feels suspended, like the world is holding its breath. Then you exhale slowly and step into the open corridor. The wood creaks under your sandals, each sound deliberate, grounding. The morning's long ritual has sculpted you into stillness, but now it's time to rejoin the flow of life, the quiet collision between inner calm and outer motion. You move through the hall toward the courtyard, where sunlight gathers like water in a stone basin. The air smells faintly of moss and pine, cool against your painted neck. You pause before the screen door and slide it open. The garden awaits, and with it, the world. A koi ripples the pond as though sensing your arrival. It circles once, then disappears beneath a lily pad. You watch the movement, slow and circular, and recognize yourself in it. Graceful repetition, endless, purposeful, beautiful even when unseen. You find a shaded bench near the garden wall and sit, careful not to disturb the fall of your kimono. Beyond the gate, you hear distant laughter, a group of travelers making their way toward Jayan. You can picture them already, wide-eyed, craning for a glimpse of tradition-made flesh. It's strange, isn't it? To be both myth and person at once. You exist in the blurred space between expectation and truth, both admired and misunderstood. You sip the thought like cooled tea, letting its bitterness fade on your tongue. Historians still argue whether geisha are best understood as artists, entertainers, or cultural symbols, each definition neat and inadequate in its own way. You've read the arguments, heard the debates, smiled politely when someone used the word mystery like a compliment. But mystery, to you, is simply the result of listening too little. You reach up, adjusting a loose strand near your temple. The waxed hair holds, gleaming like lacquer. The sunlight refracts off it in narrow threads, haloing you in a light you neither sought nor refused. A sparrow lands near your feet, bold and unbothered. You drop a few crumbs from your sleeve. It hops closer, pecks twice, and darts away. You envy its honesty. No performance, no preparation, just hunger and flight. Still, even the sparrow rehearses, you think. Every leap and landing is instinct honed by repetition. Perhaps everything alive practices, whether it admits it or not. You draw a long breath. Beneath the layers of silk, your ribs expand just enough. The weight of the obi presses comfortingly into your back. It's strange how what once felt restrictive now feels necessary. A reminder that boundaries can cradle as much as they confine. A faint rustle announces another presence. Your mentor, older now, her movements slower but no less graceful, appears at the edge of the garden. She joins you on the bench, her face soft with the familiarity of someone who's seen you in every stage of becoming. "Tea went well?" she asks. You nod. The foam held. She smiles, eyes glinting. "Then the day will, too." The two of you sit in silence. She folds her hands in her lap, and you notice the way her sleeves have frayed at the edges. There's something comforting about it, the quiet erosion of perfection over time. Even silk surrenders eventually. She tilts her head, studying you. "You look steady today." You chuckle. "It took me long enough." Her laughter, low and rich, rolls through the garden. "It always does," she says. "Stillness isn't something we find, it's something that finally gives up hiding." You let the words sink in. They feel like a secret passed between generations, lighter than air yet too important to forget. A cloud drifts over the sun, and for a heartbeat, the garden dims. Shadows slide across the pond, soft and fleeting. The world, you realize, is constantly adjusting its own light, just as you do, sometimes bright, sometimes muted, but always aware of what must be shown and what must remain hidden. You rise first, bowing slightly. Your mentor mirrors the gesture, a faint smile curving her lips. "Go on," she says, "the city will be waiting soon." You turn toward the path leading back inside. The air feels thicker now, full of invisible expectation. Every ritual so far has prepared you for this, the crossing from inner sanctuary to outer stage. The day's true performance has not yet begun, but your calm is set. You slide the screen door closed behind you. The sound it makes is soft and final, like punctuation marking the end of a sentence you'll reread in memory. Ahead, the faint scent of incense trails from the main hall. Your footsteps follow it instinctively. Soon, you will bow before the mirror one last time, breathe in the quiet you found, and prepare to walk out into a world that never quite sees the full story. But for now, this small moment of stillness in the garden remains yours alone, a breath between two worlds. You return to the main room where your lacquered mirror waits, glinting with a quiet authority that borders on sacred. The light from the courtyard filters in through the paper screen, soft and golden, casting a honeyed glow over the tatami mats. You kneel before the mirror once more, and for a brief, indulgent heartbeat, you let yourself simply look. What you see is not a person, not entirely. You've become an arrangement of silk, of color, of gesture. A living painting. You tilt your head slightly, and the kanzashi in your hair catch the light, scattering it in tiny sparks. The reflection seems to nod back at you, calm and knowing. A breeze stirs the shiji, and somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls noon. The day is gathering pace, and with it, your mind steadies into its next ritual, readiness. You rise slowly, testing the balance of each step as though gravity itself needs negotiation. The mirror remains behind you, but its presence lingers. There's a superstition, half joke, half warning, that a geisha's mirror steals small fragments of her each morning, storing them away in its silver depths. You've never believed it, though on mornings like this, when your reflection feels a little too patient, you wonder. Historians still argue whether the concept of iki, that elusive aesthetic of effortless charm, originated in Edo's pleasure districts or grew out of older samurai ideals of composure. Wherever it began, it became your guiding star, shaping every bow, every look, every pause. To embody iki is to master understatement, to hold beauty like water in the palm without ever closing your hand. You move to the corner of the room where your instruments rest. The small drum, the folded fans, the shamisen in its cloth cover, each object radiates readiness. You choose one fan and open it with a soft snap. The paper stretches like the sigh of silk. You test its weight, feeling the pulse of air as you flick it open and closed. Practice, still. Even after all these years, your hands rehearse. Your thoughts drift toward the evening to come. There will be laughter, soft music, and the peculiar elegance of conversation laced with layers of meaning. Guests will arrive expecting to glimpse something timeless, and you'll give them exactly that, a mirror of serenity, polished by repetition and care. And yet, there's a freedom in that role, one most people miss. When you wear the mask of calm long enough, it begins to breathe for you. It becomes a refuge, not a disguise. A kind of quiet magic. You step toward the low writing desk in the corner. There lies your carcassonne, a small practice sheet for brushwork. The inkstone waits beside it, dark and glistening. You take the brush, dip it carefully, and let the first stroke fall across the page. It's a simple character, ma, the space between things. The unsounded note, the pause between words, the silence that gives rhythm its shape. The brush trembles slightly in your hand. You smile at that. Even now, imperfection visits without apology. But in that tremor, there's truth. Life refuses to be entirely smooth, no matter how elegant the surface. You rinse the brush and lay it down. The character dries slowly, the ink bleeding gently into the paper fibers. You bow to it, acknowledging the day's first creation. A knock sounds at the outer door. The voice of the house attendant follows, polite and soft. "Onisan, your rickshaw will be ready soon." You answer with a calm hi, your tone light but assured. The words feel strange in your throat after so much silence. When you stand, your reflection catches once more in the mirror's edge, now framed by movement, the silk sleeves fluttering slightly as you turn. You pause, letting your eyes meet your own. For a moment, it's like greeting an old friend who's been waiting all morning. "Let's not keep them waiting," you whisper, and turn away. You walk toward the entryway, the sound of your steps absorbed by the tatami. The scent of sandalwood trails faintly behind you, proof of presence. You slip on your lacquered okobo sandals, awkward at first, but familiar, almost loyal. The height changes your posture, straightens the spine, lengthens the neck. The doorway opens before you, revealing the narrow lane outside. The world beyond glows brighter, louder, more alive. Vendors call. Wind chimes clink. The sun slides across tiled roofs, gilding the air itself. You take one steadying breath. And then, you move. The layers of silk shift around you like a small, private storm, each rustle a quiet drumbeat announcing your passage. The ritual of morning has done its work. You are calm, composed, untouchable. Still, as your first footstep lands on the stone, you can't resist one small, irreverent thought. You probably won't survive these shoes if you walk too fast. You smile at your own joke, soft and invisible. Even calm has its humor. The rickshaw waits at the end of the path, its lacquer gleaming like onyx. The driver bows, and you nod in return. As you climb in, the city stretches out before you, ready to receive the calm you've spent all morning crafting. The rickshaw jolts slightly as it begins to move, wooden wheels clattering softly against the narrow Kyoto stones. You settle your hands in your lap, watching the city unfold like an ancient scroll in motion. The air is warm, touched by the faint scent of rain from some distant cloud that hasn't yet arrived. Each breath carries incense, tea leaves, the metallic tang of temple bells. You glide past Mashiya townhouses whose wooden lattices glow in the noon light, their sliding doors half open to reveal quiet shop interiors, silk sellers, calligraphy stands, the faint glimmer of ceramics in shadowed corners. Tourists wander the lanes like dreamers who accidentally stepped into the past. You catch one child staring at you, eyes wide, finger pointing. His mother bows apologetically, but you only smile. You've seen that wonder before. It never grows old. The rickshaw turns onto Hanamikoji Street. The familiar rhythm of the wheels merges with the shuffle of footsteps, the laughter of apprentices carrying baskets, the creak of shutters opening for the day's commerce. This is your stage before the evening stage, the soft rehearsal of existence among the living. Historians still argue whether Kyoto's Gion district should be considered a living museum or a surviving neighborhood. You think it's both, half performance, half pulse. The truth lies in the balance between ritual and chaos, in the way the modern world brushes shoulders with the ancient without quite daring to disturb it. You lean slightly forward, letting your gaze trace the eaves of old tea houses. The shadows beneath them are alive with quiet stories. Once, during your apprentice years, you used to imagine those shadows whispering to one another when the humans were gone. They probably still do. The driver hums softly, a tune you can't quite place. You recognize it eventually as a children's song about cranes returning in spring. The melody loops gently, unhurried. You watch his shoulders move, steady and rhythmic, the way he navigates the uneven cobblestones like memory itself. You catch your reflection briefly in a shop window, a shimmer of silk, a flicker of color. For a heartbeat, you look unreal, like a ghost caught mid-breath. You blink and the illusion breaks. The glass shows a bicycle passing instead. That's the funny thing about reflection, it tells the truth too late. The rickshaw slows as it nears the bridge over Shirakawa Stream. The water glints beneath cherry branches now stripped of blossoms, only a few pale petals still clinging, stubborn as forgotten dreams. You've performed near this very bridge before, soft music beneath paper lanterns, laughter echoing from a tea house veranda. The memory feels close enough to touch. You ask the driver to stop. He nods and eases the rickshaw aside. You step down carefully, holding your sleeves high enough to avoid the dust. The air near the stream is cooler, and the soft murmur of water carries through the stillness. You walk to the railing and rest your hands on it, feeling the rough wood under your palms. For a long moment, you simply stand there, watching the current move beneath you. Each ripple catches a fragment of sunlight before vanishing into the next. It feels like a metaphor, though for what exactly, you're not sure. Beauty, time, the absurd brevity of perfection. A passing student sketches on the far bank, glancing up just long enough to capture your outline in quick strokes. You smile faintly, amused at the thought of being scenery in someone else's art. The circle is complete. You've spent years learning how to embody stillness, and now stillness has chosen to study you. A breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve. The fan tucked in your obi stirs slightly, as though it, too, wants to breathe. You open it just once, letting the paper flutter, then close it again. The gesture feels ceremonial, unnecessary, yet deeply right, like punctuation at the end of an invisible sentence. From behind, the driver clears his throat gently. Time moves on, even for rituals. You nod and return to the rickshaw. The driver bows, and soon the rhythm resumes, wood on stone, will on world. As the city scrolls by once more, you feel something subtle shifting inside you. Not fatigue, not excitement, but a deeper calm, like the moment between inhale and exhale when everything briefly holds. This calm isn't practiced anymore, it's lived. The road bends toward Yasaka Shrine. You glimpse vermilion gates flashing between rooftops, a sudden blaze of color against the muted browns of wood and stone. The shrine bell rings once, and the sound lingers in your chest, vibrating like a chord struck in air. You bow your head slightly, not out of obligation, but gratitude. Somewhere beyond the next turn, your destination waits, a tea house poised in timeless ritual, expecting your arrival. But you no longer feel like you're preparing for performance. Instead, it feels as if the city itself has been preparing for you. You lean back as the rickshaw carries you onward, the hum of the wheels fading into a rhythm that matches your heartbeat. The day, at last, is complete. The rickshaw slows to a gentle stop at the entrance of the tea house, where the Norn curtains ripple like quiet waves. You step down, careful as ever, and thank the driver with a nod. The world here feels hushed, time diluted in the scent of tatami, sandalwood, and the faint sweetness of plum blossoms carried from a nearby courtyard. You pause just outside the door. The paper lantern above sways slightly, its glow soft against the afternoon. Beneath its light, you adjust your sleeves and inhale once, deeply. The day has guided you to this point, each ritual a breath, each breath a quiet rehearsal. Now, that calm takes form. Sliding the door open, you step into the tea house. The sound of the door is a whisper, respectful of the space within. The room greets you with the scent of matcha and the low hum of conversation. A hostess bows, you return it, slow and deliberate. The silk of your kimono sighs as you move. Inside, the guests are already gathered around the lacquered table. Their voices hush as you approach, not out of awe, but out of acknowledgement. They've come to share in something they don't quite have a name for, a presence, a poise, a fragment of timeless quiet made visible. You kneel gracefully, the motion fluid from years of repetition. The room's silence shifts, charged but gentle. A fan lies on the floor beside you. You open it with a flick, the sound a soft punctuation that draws every eye. You begin to pour the tea. Steam coils up like silk thread, delicate and precise. The motion is meditative, a continuation of the morning's calm. Your hands remember the sequence before your mind does. Scoop, pour, whisk, serve. The guests watch, entranced by the rhythm, by the illusion that serenity is effortless. One of them, an older man with a scholar's posture, breaks the silence to ask, "How long did it take to learn such stillness?" You smile faintly. "Long enough to forget I was learning," you reply, voice low but certain. Laughter stirs around the table, warm and fleeting. Historians still argue whether the art of chado, the tea ceremony, was meant as performance, meditation, or philosophy in motion. You know it's all three. Each whisk of matcha, each measured bow, carries the ghost of centuries. Every geisha who performs this ritual lends her breath to an unbroken chain of moments stretching back through time. The tea's surface gleams, mirror smooth. You hand the first cup forward, bowing slightly. The guest accepts it with both hands, mirroring your motion. For an instant, your reflections overlap in the liquid, their gaze and yours, joined in stillness. As more cups are served, the air softens. Laughter grows easier, words less guarded. The atmosphere of the room blooms into warmth. You find yourself laughing too, a low, genuine sound that startles even you a little. Calm, it turns out, doesn't forbid joy, it just teaches it to whisper. When the last cup is placed down, you fold your fan again and rest your hands lightly in your lap. The room feels suspended in amber. You can hear the rain beginning outside, a soft, pattering rhythm against the roof. The day exhales through you. A few moments later, the hostess signals discreetly that the gathering will soon conclude. You rise slowly, bow to the guests, and collect your fan. The ritual has ended, yet something remains, an echo, a vibration, like music that refuses to fade. Outside, the air has cooled. Rain dots the stone path in perfect symmetry. You step beneath the eaves, pausing to watch the droplets chase one another down the bamboo gutters. Each splash feels like punctuation, soft, complete. As you walk home, the weight of the day dissolves one layer at a time. The city glows dimly in the rain, reflections sliding across cobblestones. The scent of night's approach is clean and deep, almost tender. Your steps find their rhythm again, slower now, but steady. The rituals of morning have carried you through another day, and though the motions will repeat tomorrow, each repetition feels earned. Serenity, you've learned, is not a final state but a constant return. You glance once at your reflection in a puddle, the colors warped but unmistakably yours. The world wavers around it, yet the image holds steady. You smile at it, softly, and move on. The rain thickens, soft as silk, wrapping the city in its hush. You lift your sleeve to shield your face and continue walking, calm carried like a lantern within you. And now, as the sound of rain fades into the soft hum of night, let your own breath slow. You've walked through the calm of another's morning, traced every gesture from first light to dusk, and found something familiar within it, an echo of your own quiet rituals. The stillness of the geisha's world isn't about perfection, it's about presence. About noticing the silk against skin, the weight of breath, the light glancing off a mirror before it fades. You can feel that same peace settle around you now. The rhythm of your pulse, the faint sound of air moving in your room, even the rise and fall of your chest, all of it has its own ritual, its own ancient music. If you listen closely, the city outside your window has its own hush, its own hidden tea ceremony, the soft shuffle of footsteps, the hum of distant tires, the whisper of night itself making room for rest. Let the image linger, a quiet room in Kyoto, a teacup cooling beside a lantern, silk folded neatly for tomorrow. The rain still falls, steady and patient, washing everything into softness. In that stillness, you find yourself lighter. You are both the watcher and the watched, both the ritual and the breath that breaks it. So, rest now. Let the calm you've borrowed tonight become your own. You've walked far enough. The mirror closes, the lantern dims, and the story exhales its final breath. Sweet dreams.